One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Good afternoon, I5 Space. Thank you to everyone who is tuning in on our YouTube channel or our website. My name is Evangeline Cernas. I am the current Outreach Team Commander for I5 Space.
And I'm Richard Jones, Outreach Team Member, and today we are delighted to have a very special guest for our talk, Virgin Galactic astronaut Andy Sadhwani.
Andy was born in Houston, Texas, and his fascination with space began at age 5 after a tour of the Saturn V rocket at NASA. As a kid, he enjoyed watching the interplanetary travel portrayed on Star Trek, The Next Generation, and of course, Star Wars. This budding passion for space was encouraged by his parents, who enrolled him in aviation and space camp programs and brought him materials to design and build model rockets and airplanes. After becoming an Eagle Scout, Andy taught the Space Exploration and Astronomy Merit Badge at numerous scout camps.
2004, while watching the NASA channel in his graduate school dormitory, Andy witnessed SpaceShipOne become the first privately crewed spacecraft to reach space, and saw it ultimately win the Ansari X Prize and launch what is now Virgin Galactic. SpaceShipOne was pivotal in shaping his current career as a propulsion engineer. He states event encouraged him to save money for the opportunity to take that same journey, as well as earn his education. After receiving his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Carnegie Mellon University, he went on to complete a dual master's degree in mechanical engineering and aeronautics and astronautics from Stanford University, where he developed hybrid rocket motor technology and contributed to numerous science publications.
Andy currently serves as the principal propulsion engineer at SpaceX. His previous roles include academic researcher at both NASA and Stanford University. Driven by a passion for advancing humanity, Andy works in his spare time as an educator, facilitating technical and soft skill courses, reaching more than 100,000 people to date.
Andy's spacesuit from Galactic 007 displays the US and India flags. The US flag represents Andy's country of birth and where he was given the opportunities to live out his dreams, and the India flag represents his family's country of origin. What started as a trip to NASA when Andy was a child accumulated in his dream of going to space. His parents taught him that any altitude is attainable with perseverance. So thank you very much, sir, for talking with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Richard and Evangeline.
Awesome. So yeah, sir, go ahead with your talk. We're so excited to hear what you have to say.
Wonderful. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. When Evangeline reached out and said, we'd like you to talk to the Space Force, I was like, you mean me? It's because I'm so excited for what y'all are doing. You have no idea. At my workplace and amongst my friends, we often talk about the exciting things that you have planned for us, not only in terms of extending the outreach of humanity, but also in terms of like defense and then protecting the nation. Today I'll be chatting with you about my Virgin Galactic flight and, what we can look forward to in terms of space travel. Okay, so I'll take it off. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, super. I flew on Virgin Galactic back in June 8th, so just a few months ago. And in the background, what you can see is a picture of the Earth that was taken by the pilots. So this is something that I had seen when going up. A little about me. So like many of you, I was fascinated by rockets. So I have like an early Apollo rocket here in the background. I went to Johnson Space Center where I fell in love with the engine technology. And I flew model rockets myself. In fact, for a past couple of days, I helped a bunch of young scouts, both boys and girls, learn how to build rockets and fly their own rockets. Went to space camp, later became an Eagle Scout. And a couple of small facts, I helped design, I'm a co-designer for the Oral-B cross-section toothbrush. It's the first toothbrush to have an ergonomic handle. So if you've seen this, that's something I invented, actually. And then I also developed the Crest Sonicare toothbrush. Sold for a few years, but the manual toothbrush people like more. These are my early inspirations. This is my second grade teacher and my fifth grade teacher, my fifth grade teacher was able to attend the launch. And I have this slide because for many of you, a lot of kids look up to you as well as adults, and you never know who you're going to inspire. So my second grade teacher put up pictures of the planets, and that invited me to look more into that. She opened the doorway. And my fifth grade teacher allowed me to kind of get away with the drawing on paper while she was teaching. I had an imagination and she encouraged that. So you're an inspiration to others, and please keep doing what you're doing. Other motivations are the X-1. So this is an early military plane flown by Chuck Yeager. I read all his books and I read what the military was looking to do. And it was so inspiring that he exceeded the sound barrier. And then I was also inspired by SpaceShipOne. This was created by a company called Scaled Composites, and their technology was purchased by Virgin Galactic. And I was like, wow, they went multiple times the speed of sound. They went to space. This is a whole new revolution for the private industry. And then I was also fascinated by Anusha Ansari. She went to space. She's the first female space tourist, or I should say, spaceflight participant. And she wrote on my picture, that she signed, "Dream Big." And I put this in my hallway. So every day when I walked out the door, I reminded myself to perform strong. And having little pictures like this hanging around can be very exciting for people. So if you ever, sign things for others, or they may hang on to it, and they'll look up to you forever. So this is my career. I went to Stanford University for graduate school, where I participated in hybrid rocket research. I wanted to get a job in rocketry, but I wasn't getting them. And what I found was that the people that were getting the jobs that I wanted, they had some hands-on experience doing the things that I wanted, to do. So I found a rocket group and I joined them and I participated, and I helped contribute to a few academic papers. Later, I joined SpaceX, where I still am. I've been there since 2007 full-time. So I helped develop the technology for the Merlin 1A through Merlin 1D engines. I also helped develop the Dragon engines, which have taken astronauts to space. And then I've developed most recently the Raptor engine, which is what I've been working on since about 2012. We most recently had a Starship launch a few days ago, which I actively participated in, and I'm really excited about what that's going to bring to the United States as well as the rest of the world. Now, a little bit on definition. The FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, has given a definition of what human spaceflight is. So for those that are chosen by the government, they are government astronauts. And for those that fly, like myself, on their own dime, or perhaps they're funded by other people, we're called space flight participants. Sometimes we're called space tourists. Sometimes these individuals go orbital, and many times they go suborbital. And there's a big difference between orbital and suborbital, although the view is very, very similar. So if we take a look at suborbital means that the rocket or spacecraft shoots straight up, and then it comes back down, which is what I had done. And you get a beautiful view of Earth, and you'll see those pictures in just a second. And you have to exceed 50 statute miles. That's the US definition. The international definition is 100 kilometers, but most people are launched from the United States. So 50 miles is the right number to use, if you ask me. But the view is about the same between 50 miles and 100 kilometers. 50 miles is about the same as 80 kilometers. And then if we take a look at orbit, SpaceX right now is the key provider for orbital spaceflight, and they go to a much higher altitude to deliver astronauts to the International Space Station. Most recently, SpaceX has launched Jared Isaacman on his Polaris Dawn mission, and they had reached an altitude of 1,400 kilometers. It's just phenomenal what the team is doing. So, I have goosebumps about what the Space Force is going to be doing. I'm just kind of like putting myself in your shoes. What are you going to see? Like, what's the action? How high are you going to go? And so, whether y'all are on a space station, or whether you're going from point to point, for doing like an insertion for some activity, either a training activity or a real combat operation, it's going to be amazing. Okay. So as far as preparation, on my suborbital trip, the minimum required training is about 3 days. I opted for a little bit more, so I think I did about 5 days at Virgin Galactic. Now, I opted for additional training, which was not required for what I did, but I did this training because I thought, okay, for government astronauts, what did they have to go through? How did they get selected? And I wanted to go move towards that. So I participated in a zero-G flight, and this was actually paid for by Virgin Galactic. And then here we're pretending to be supermen and superwomen flying through the air. We also could do flips. And we have a celebrity in the back. This is Dr. Cyan Proctor. She flew on Inspiration 4 with Jared Isaacman. Just a lovely lady. She was actually a NASA finalist back in the day to become a real astronaut. And I'm so grateful that she got to fly to space on SpaceX. And this is me over here. I've got like a little outfit on. I'm going on for like a second round on the zero-G flight to build up my confidence, because honestly, the first time I went, I got a little bit nauseous. So I had to sit out the last few parabolas. I felt like a wimp. So I said, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to nail it. And then the next time I nailed it. I also put myself through flight training. So I flew in a Cessna aircraft at the Hawthorne Airport, which is adjacent to the SpaceX main facility in California. So I would, before work, I would go flying, and then maybe during lunchtime, I would sneak it in. And you can see this airplane is probably older than most of you. It's almost as old as me. And it was really exciting. It was challenging learning how to talk with air traffic control. It's a different language. I'm sure that in the military, y'all have a specific language that you use, and I participated in that. And then this is my heart rate. So this is my first solo, and my blood was pumping. The crosswinds were very high. I wasn't used to it, so I nailed or I went in for 11 or 12 landings, exceeded my instructor's expectations, but my heart was pumping. In addition, I also went through centrifuge training. So you can see a centrifuge. This is over in Philadelphia. And this thing is spinning around. This is where some of our previous astronauts have gone. And in here, they have you lie in a chair, and this thing can configure itself. And it can configure itself for GX and GZ acceleration. So GX, and you may already know all these things, but GX means it goes into your chest, and GZ means it goes through your head. And when I first did this, I was a little bit obnoxious, and I said, oh, this is no problem. They teach us breathing exercises of how to handle the G's. So we squeeze our legs, and then we squeeze our butt. They told us pretend like there's an acorn between your butt, and you squeeze that. And they also say squeeze your stomach. And what that does is it keeps the blood in the upper torso. In addition, what they ask us to do is to do what's called the hook maneuver. And it may be different in the military. And what they say is you're going to make the sound hook, and then it locks in your blood. I think the carotid artery gets constricted. And then we go hook, 2, 3, hook, 1, 2, 3, taking deep breaths, and then that refreshes the oxygen in the brain, and that gave me good practice. And when we did the exercise again, instead of my peripheral vision going from 170 degrees down to about 10 to 30 degrees when I did 6Gs, I had full vision and full color, because in addition to the tunnel effect, I also had some kind of brownouts or grayouts. And I'm sure some of you may have felt something similar. I lost weight for my trip, so we could go a little bit higher in altitude. And so I went back down to my college weight, maybe a little bit below. So I was a little bit more susceptible compared to most people. Most people would be just fine. And here I have my heart rate and other data on how my body was behaving. And yeah, so this is the flight profile of SpaceShipOne. We are dropped from a mothership. This is similar to the X-1, Chuck Yeager's plane, as well as the X-27. You're dropped from a mothership, and then you just a very short second later, or less than a second later, the engines fire, and then you're pushed back in your seat. You experience 3 Gs. So here's release. We release at 45,000 feet. And then shortly, so I think it's about 3/4 of a second, the pilot has the yoke forward, and you're really diving down because like you want to get away from the mothership's getting away from you. And then the engine fires, you're pushed back in your seat, and then we go horizontal. The air is formed stably around the wings, and we start proceeding to what's called the gamma turn. So with the gamma turn, in addition to feeling chest G's, we're also feeling axial G's, and the combined effect gives us about 4.3 G's of total loading. And then you can, but by doing the breathing and the maneuvers and everything is perfectly fine. And I'm looking through the pilot's window, I can see everything. Later in flight, we are going now straight up. So we go from 3 Gs to 4.3 Gs. And after the centripetal effect is done, now we just feel GX again. We're going straight up, and a feather is deployed, and then that's what helps us recover, helps the pilots recover the vehicle, because later on in flight, it's not active now because there's no air up there. We're in space. Eventually, as we come back down, because gravity pulls us back down, the feather starts slowing us down, because it's basically if you're in your car, maybe you're going like 70 miles an hour along the freeway, you stick your hand out the window, you don't feel anything, and then you put your hand this way, it goes back. So it's kind of like that. So it's kind of similar to badminton, if you've ever played that, where the feather slows it down. These are very simple things where Burt Rutan, just a genius guy, just got up on a tall building and said, okay, I'm going to start making model airplanes and throwing it down. We're not going to spend a lot of money on a wind tunnel. Just very genius things to do. And these kinds of thought experiments, all of us can do. And it's like a good reminder on that. Okay, so this is the propulsion system right here. And the propulsion system is powered by a hybrid rocket. So we call it as a hybrid motor. Our oxidizer, in order to get a flame, you need a fuel, and then you need an oxidizer, and you need a spark. So the oxidizer that they've chosen is nitrous oxide. In other rockets, they may use liquid oxygen. In this case, it's nitrous oxide, similar to nitrous that you would use in, say, like a sports car. And then here we have a fuel grain. So the fuel grain is similar to what they use in car tire rubber. They have a proprietary blend, so I don't know exactly what they use, but that's the general idea. And they also have sparks. So they have sparks flying in here. You add the oxidizer, it burns. And then you have the throat. So the flow velocity would probably be around Mach 0.3 or Mach 0.4, I'm guessing, for their combustion chamber. And it's going to change a little bit as their fuel grain starts regressing. And then at the throat, it's choked. So the flow is exactly 1. The Mach number is 1. So it's going the speed of sound. And then by the time it exits, it's going probably like Mach 3-ish when it exits. And that propels the vehicle forward due to Newton's law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I know like a lot of you already know this, so I'm probably, speaking things you already know. But, the atoms are like little baseballs, and you're chucking them out the back, and then that accelerates the vehicle forward. Now, the pressure that's used is helium. And in order to get the maximum propulsion efficiency, they load the propellants in the morning where it's coldest, and they chill the nitrous so that way the density is higher and they can fit more in it, because the thrust is going to be proportional to the mass flow rate times the exit velocity. So the more mass flow rate or the weight flow rate they can get through, then the higher the thrust. Okay, the schedule. So I was informed about 4 months ahead of time that I would be flying. And they had me go through a physical exam where they did like a bunch of checks. So they checked my heart for any sort of murmurs, similar to what you're doing. I'm sure what y'all do is way more intense. When I went to the doctor's office, I was probed in ways I haven't been probed before. I'm like, okay, this is fine. I can't imagine what it's like in the military, but it was done. And then we had our space flight suit fitting. They gave us lots of food. We got to meet with the right people. And I think the exciting part was meeting with the engineers and technicians that designed this, because your life is in their hands. And it's wonderful. They spent, like many of you, they spent time away from their family, and they've made a dedication towards space flight, which we're really grateful for. Um, Okay, accommodations. These are the nicest accommodations I have had. They had a separate room for your bed. It's like, okay, this is really nice. They had really great food. I was just grateful. And they had a room right here. This is our changing room. And we could also take a rest here if we wanted to. It looks like a locker, but it actually is a deep locker, and they have a lot of space. My name's on the door, so I felt special. And then later on the last day, when I removed the name tag, Sir Richard Branson's name was on there. I'm like, oh my gosh, Sir Richard Branson was like in the same room. Wow, that was really incredible. Um, okay, so this is Spaceport America. And then this is our plane right here. Over on the right-hand side, the spaceport is in the background. It looks like the runway's curved. It's just the angle of the cockpit that kind of distorts the lens. And then this is they can choose which direction they want to launch from, just like, on your bases. And the space plane is right here. This is Nikola Pesel. He had worked for the Air Force, I think the Top Gun equivalent of the Air Force, highly qualified, um, very good pilot. And then our other pilot is Jamil Janjua, also a previous member of the Air Force, extremely qualified. Uh, so here's our flight suit. It's got a lot of pockets. It's very comfortable and it looks cool. So those are the key things. So maximum absorbent garment, adult diaper. Zephyr, which is just like a motion sickness medication that you probably heard of before, in case we need it. Just dissolve it under the tongue. Didn't need it. It was fine. And then we've got some other just, basic gear, including some water and other things. So everything's pretty lightweight. And then our flight awareness training, I had like a premium mission, so I got to fly a couple times in these planes. So we had a Game Bird, and they also had an Extra 300, highly maneuverable. I'm sure what you have is faster. This is plenty fast for me. But in a Cessna, I had my instructor and I did up to 2 Gs. That was like the limit of the airplane. These could do like up to 10 Gs. And so the pilot was in the back and I was in the front. They were the pilots in command. I got a little bit of time to handle the stick. And so I wouldn't embarrass myself. I did Microsoft Flight Simulator training. I crashed my plane like 4 or 5 times taking off the runway. But after that, I had it, and I was like, so when I handled the controls, with them, obviously they had their hand on the stick too. They were the pilots in command. It was highly maneuverable, very easy to do. And one of the maneuvers, we were going in a circle, and then there was like a little bump. And I said, just checking in to see what that was. He was like, oh, we were going in such like a straight circle that we intercepted our own wake. And so I thought that was kind of like a cool thing. Obviously gravity's bringing the wake down, so we're losing altitude because that's just a function of the turning. But I thought that was really cool. So I practiced my breathing maneuvers here. We hit up to about 7 Gs. We also pulled some negative Gs. We pulled about like negative, I think 2 Gs. Maybe it was -1.5. It was a little bit more than we were supposed to. I was pointing down, there was the Earth, and I was like, oh my God, we're headed towards the Earth. The pilot's like, keep pushing. I was like, okay. So I don't know if he pushed the stick or I did, but that's what happened. These are my crewmates, a very international group. So this is Tuva. He is from Turkey. I'm from the United States. I was born in Houston, Texas. My parents are US citizens. They came over from India. This is to honor their heritage. Irving flew in the Air Force for Israel. He later came to the US. He is a citizen, so that's on his top. And then we have Giorgio, who comes from Italy. We all brought different things. This is Jamil Janjua. He's the co-pilot. He comes from Canada, and he later worked for the Air Force. And then this is Nicola Pessel from Italy, and he also came to the US and worked for the Air Force. This is some of the research that we flew. So as part of our mission, we flew Tuva, who was a backup pilot for a SpaceX Axiom mission for Turkey, and he flew some payloads. The thing that it's on his head looked at, I believe, his cerebral cortex, trying to pick up evidence for the overview effect, which is an effect that people have when they see the Earth for the first time. And I'm so excited for y'all to see Earth for the first time. And if you find me on LinkedIn, please do let me know what it's like, or just reach out in general. I just want to be of service. And he had like other experiments. He had like diabetic experiments where he would inject himself with medication just to see what it would be like. So that way, if they can show that, hey, if you have diabetes, you can fly to space, then he's opening up the pathway for so many others to fly to space, either as civilians for fun or for operational things like what you're doing. There were experiments by UC Berkeley as well as Purdue, some extremely bright people there. This is my payload. So I flew sunflower seeds, little astronaut Legos. I flew 5 Indian flags and I flew 10 American flags. So one is hanging at my parents' place. And then I volunteered at Camp Karankawa here in Texas. So I gave them a flag and they were, excited to have it. And then I flew that picture of Anusha Ansari that she signed. The pilot stuck it under the chair. I'm so grateful. And then this is a picture I drew in Miss Wolf's class with an Apollo spacecraft, my rendition of one. And this is like when I flew on the Concorde many years ago. I wrote a postcard to my parents and they kept it. My parents and I have tea together. So this NutraSweet. And then my Eagle Scout card and some white sands, just little mementos, a little bit of money. Okay, flight day. 0 hour, 9 a.m. Gonna be high as a kite by then. So that's Elton John's song. They had a bunch of people waiting outside. There were like 500 people. Virgin Galactic really knows how to treat you, and it was exciting. It was thrilling. Sir Richard Branson opened the door for me and I sat down. I was like, thank you. And then Giorgio looked at me and said, you realize that a billionaire opened the door for you? I was like, I know, I don't know what to say. So it was just incredible. He is a people genius. I was amazed at how just hyper intelligent he was and how excellent he was at reading people. His memory is absolutely amazing. Elon is a technological genius and Richard Branson is a people genius. They get along really well. In fact, for Sir Richard Branson's flight, the story was Sir Richard Branson woke up and he was in his pajamas, and then he was like, "Oh, hi, Elon," and Elon was in the kitchen making him breakfast because they're buddies. Okay, and then on the right, bottom right, we're giving ourselves high fives. Okay, so T minus 4 minutes, things are getting real. T minus 30 seconds, I'm tensing my muscles. T minus 5 seconds, I'm like, here we go. And then it's 5, 3, they skip the 4. 5, 3, 2, 1, release, release, release. A piece of metal breaks. Pilot has the yoke forward. We're going down, and the yoke forward is also to probably help break that metal. We're released. Less than a second later, the engines are on, and then they're fired. We're pushed back on our seat, and we're feeling high G loading. You can see that the pilots are all in the front, and we're just behind them. So this is us. Let me just go back just a second so I can describe what happens. I'm going to close my eyes for parts of this because so I can give you everything I have. Release, release, release. We're going down. It feels like my brain and body are somewhere above me because we're pulling some negative G's, and all of a sudden we're thrust back on our seat with 3 G's. So I weigh about 150 pounds. Now I weigh 450 pounds. It feels like there's this invisible hand that's pushing on me, but it feels good. It feels safe and comfortable. And it's about 70,000 pounds pushing us. We start arcing up during the gamma turn, and then we're going straight up. I'm looking out the pilot's window, and it's sky blue outside, and it goes from sky blue to about pitch black in a matter of like, I don't know, like half a minute or 45 seconds. So it's, morning time outside and then it's like nighttime outside, and it's absolutely incredible. And then after about a minute, the pilot says, cabin, you're clear to unstrap. I didn't hear him. I just saw his thumb. So I unbuckled my belt. I looked out the window and I was like, oh my gosh, I could not believe what I saw. And I'll go into that in just a little bit. About 30 seconds after that, Tuva was doing experiments. One of his experiments was a meditation experiment. And after he completed his experiments, he said, okay, guys, I'm unstrapping. And then we all reached around and we gave each other a high five. So this is kind of like the tail end of our high five. And we're just kind of jiggling around to space. I'm looking out the window upside down. I don't know which way it is. In space, it doesn't really matter. And yet there's a sense of freedom. You know, my father, it's not just because like I'm, talking to the military. This is something he literally would tell me a lot of times in the car. He would say, son, this is a great country. In this country, you have so much freedom to do what you want to do. And here I can pick any job that I want. Never forget that you have a choice. And if you work hard, you can get anything that you want. And when I was in space, it was a reminder, because like this technology was developed in the United States. A lot of these technologies develop in the United States because of that freedom. And when I was in space, oh my gosh, it felt like all the weight on my shoulders was gone, and I felt the sense of freedom of like I actually made it, and thank God. I'm just so grateful to be here. Okay, so here's the view of the Earth, and I'm going to close my eyes for this one. Is when I first looked out the window, I listened to the audio recorder and I said, oh my God, this is amazing. Those don't, I typically don't say. I'm pretty analytical, pretty much a scientist, but I was just amazed at what I saw. In fact, I forgot what I had seen. I had amnesia. I remembered kind of everything. I just remember things were bright and I remember the atmosphere, but I forgot other things. And so it was a few days after my flight, and my best friend Heather, I called her up, or I sent her a text message, and I said, hey, I know you mostly work with folks coming from like the military, like after war. Sometimes there's some intense things that you go through. But I told her I had amnesia. Can I come over? Can you help me out? Remember? She's like, yeah, come on over. So she said, close your eyes. Okay, you're at your seat. You look out the window. How did you feel? And everything came back because I was so in my head, and I had to like go back to my heart. And I was like, okay, what I feel was warmth. I feel extreme warmth from this really, really bright planet. It's so bright. It's so blue. And I remember seeing two layers of the atmosphere. One was like a whitish blue. The other one was like a kind of like a darker blue. And you could see through the atmosphere. It was so translucent, and you could see right through it. And the rest of space was so dark because the Earth was so bright. So bright that you couldn't see any other planets, like you couldn't see the stars. It was just like this blue marble that was floating in this like, vast, vast sea of darkness. And I could get a little glimpse of the crescent moon that was kind of like in the lower part of the window. The other thing that I remembered was like how thin the atmosphere was when we were up there. And the Earth is huge. Like what we saw was this, like in our window, we saw the curvature of the Earth, and it's definitely curved. I can tell you that. I could see the curvature when I was on the Concorde like 20-ish years ago, and I saw it again, 20 years later. Um, and like your brain just wants to complete the picture. It's like, okay, let me fill in the missing puzzle pieces, and it's absolutely big. So I saw southern part of the United States. I saw parts of Mexico. I saw the Pacific Ocean, and there's like millions of people, like hundreds of millions of people down there, and you don't really see any borders. So you don't see all that, but you just see the Earth. The Earth was here a long time before we were. And it's just there, and it's giving us opportunities. Now, this is we were coming back, and I'll describe entry. So this is entry right here. We have a lot more axial G loading. I forgot to do my tensing maneuver and it caught up on me. So you can see my heart rate spike. I was like, oh, wait, things are happening. So I got tiny bit of brownout, but I did my tensing, everything came back, and there's like a delayed response in the heart. So that's why there's that little blip. But you can see that with the physiological data, my heart rate is basically no higher than it was than my first solo in the airplane. So that would be the same. I would imagine. I mean, y'all have probably, super regimented lifestyles. You'll like far beat whatever most of the civilians will be able to do. There's one fellow, Ron. He won't mind me sharing this, but he had practiced ahead of time, and his heart rate stayed at like 100 the whole time. I'm like, Ron, are you serious? Like 100? He's like, yeah. It's like, okay, well, I'm jealous. And then I'll describe entry for a little bit. During entry, so we get back on in our seats, I get my belts on, and people say, is that enough time? Like, how long were you up? The whole trip was 10 minutes. How long were you weightless? About 3 to 4 minutes. How long did you get to look out the window? About 4-ish minutes. And they said, was that enough time? And I was like, yes, because when I looked out the window, the amount of information I was getting was like really, really, really high. And then it started asymptoting. And the amount of new information I was getting was like, starting to go flat. So you take like the derivative and it was going, it's kind of steading off. So when the pilot said, time to get back in your seat, I was a little bit sad, but I was like, okay, that's okay. It's time for the next part of this experience. Because we're on this like parabola. When they shut the engines off, the vehicle's still going up, but we still feel zero gravity, or we still feel like microgravity, because you're in free fall. So we're going Mach 3 when the engines are cut off, and we're slowly going down in speed. And when we reach the apex, we're going like 0, and then we start speeding up again. So at the peak of entry, we're going Mach 3. Belts are on, and then there's the sound. It's like, it sounds like a waterfall. It's like, oh, what's that sound? It's like, oh my gosh, that blue atmosphere that we saw out there. It's like we're coming back and it's slowing us down. The atoms are rarefied, but there's enough of them and we're going fast enough that it's slowing us down. It's kind of like watching those videos. My favorite band is Nirvana. So I remember him like jumping into the crowd, and he's got his guitar in his hand, and the crowd like, slows him down and puts him down, and he gets back on stage. So it's kind of like that. And the other thing I felt was like, I was, remember putting my last seatbelt on, and my head was getting really heavy. And I'm hearing this. I was like, why is my head getting so heavy? I was like, oh, we're slowing down because we're decelerating, because the atmosphere is, doing work to, completely slow us down. And we're coming down. Like, I work in aerospace. I helped design the Raptor engine. And, we're designing for high G loading, and we're designing for acceleration and vibration and all these things. And I'm actually feeling it now. And I was able to put one on one together, in terms of the actual experience. So we touched down. It was the smoothest landing I've ever felt. Like Nicola just put it on like butter. It was phenomenal. And I know this because most of my landings are rough. There was one landing I had at Long Beach, which was like butter. And that was like the one out of like the 100 landings or whatever I've done. That was good. And this is a space plane. Somehow he greased it on. So I mean, I know I'm talking to you because like y'all are, I'm sure there's a lot of pilots among you. This is my mom over here. She was in the kitchen earlier. I was like, Mom, we got to keep it quiet. I'm talking to the Space Force. So she's like, okay. And there's Sir Richard Branson. It was a great day. Wing ceremony. And here's a selfie I took with an actual astronaut. He flew with Anosha Ansari back in 2004. That was a delight. So here's some statistics for those of you that like numbers. So this is the Virgin Galactic astronaut pin. And then this is one right here to celebrate space tourists, suborbital and orbital. And then the next day I was coming out of the elevator trying to find my mom, and she already went to the airport to fly back to Houston. And then it's like, I missed my mom. And then Sir Richard Branson came out of the elevator, and I'm like, he was like, oh, hi, Andy. I was like, oh, hi, hi, Richard, how's it going? He's like, would you like to get breakfast? I was like, sure, I will get breakfast with you, Sir Richard Branson. It's kind of like that scene out of Wayne's World. I'm dating myself, but there's like the "we're not worthy" scene that Wayne and Garth go through. But no, he was really just a delight to talk to. He's very easy to chat with. People genius, as I mentioned before. And we were talking, he was actually asking about Elon and how he was doing. And I actually saw Elon that Friday. Like I took a few days off, and I remember our flight was on a Saturday. The Sunday we went home, and I was a little bit sad. And then on Monday morning, I got up bright and early. I was like, okay, I want to go see space hardware. And then the California Science Center was closed. And I was like, oh, I could just go across the street to SpaceX. So I went over there and saw the hardware that we're building. You know, some of it I think for y'all, and then some of it for Starlink. And it's amazing. And then later I went back to work on Friday, and then Elon passed by in the hallway. It was just kind of like cool to see, you know, both these like space pioneers in the same week. Okay, lessons learned. In addition to discovering space, I also found myself in the journey. I had to go through a lot of obstacles to get where I am now, just like many of you. And so that was wonderful. Working towards the mission statement and reminding me why I was doing this was very challenging. So, you know, having a daughter, and then having uh, working at a full-time job that's very demanding, and then working towards this mission, and, you know, supporting humanity in other ways has been very taxing. But reminding myself that I am trying to further humanity through innovation and space propulsion, and by working on this is my way to do it. So when it got difficult with the flight training, because I found it stressful. I know some of you probably love it. For me, it was a hard thing to do, especially like as somebody that just gets in my head. And then this improved my intuition as a Raptor engineer. Like imagination is so important. Um, there was a quote by Richard Feynman, who was an early member of the Manhattan Project for the you know for the bomb, and he also so like when he was working on the bomb, he was developing mathematical models on how small atoms work to, you know, get this thing working so we could, you know, win this war. And he used imagination for a lot of that. And when he worked on really large things, so he was working on things like 1 to the minus 12 meters approximately. And then he was working on things that were 1 to the 12th meters. Like we're talking about like, you know, galaxy scale or star scale and beyond. And he said that imagination is important. So he would sit in his chair, do like some visualization and imagine things, because you have to imagine things. And when you imagine things, you can like, oh, well, what if I try this? Do an experiment. Does it work or not? And whether it's science or engineering or how you run your troops, of like, okay, let me see if this strategy works. It's just, it really everything's created twice, once in the mind and once in reality. And then I gained a personal understanding of human factors and space design. So like as we work on starships, and we come by and said, hey, we're looking at, you know, sending people to Mars. What do you think about, you know, 7Gs or whatever? And in addition to thinking about sending people to Mars, I'm also thinking about y'all. Like what if I don't know what the future plans are, but what if, you know, like I want like as I would love to see everybody fly on this thing, including, you know, military and civilians, so how do we design this so it's optimal performance and comfortable too? The cosmic scale of like how large things are. And I'm also a bit more calm and peaceful. I don't sweat the small stuff as much. I used to be worried about getting in trouble on things. Now I'm just like, okay, if I get in trouble, then I'll correct for that later. I have an enhanced bond with humanity and the planet. And you know, I'm a more patient driver as well. It's like, okay, everybody's got different places to go to, and, you know, people have different mindsets. My greatest joy was in the journey that led to it. I've been worked with a coach, and I call her Coach Anna, and I said, you know, hey, now that this is all done, like people have asked me what's next, and I'm like, I don't know, like I think this may be the highest I go, and I want to be comfortable with that. And she's like, you know, people that work towards the Olympics and they come back often go through this lull. It sounds like maybe you're starting to go through that. And I think that could be true of, say, you know, even some of the operations that y'all are doing. And you're like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I found that I found a way of being happy with what I had. And I found ways of recreating the experience I had by sharing stories. And I know y'all have stories. And like when you do the storytelling around the, you know, the campfire, if y'all are camping, or around the lunch table, it's so important to do that. And have that outlet. Um, And so the overview effect can be something that can be simulated through imagery. I know I have like a link here, but all you have to do is go to Google and you or YouTube. You say type in YouTube and you say space meditation or flying through space meditation. And then if you have virtual reality goggles, they have things for that. And if you don't, you just put it on your screen and it really gives you the overview effect. I think like watching Star Trek and Star Wars, like there's this scene in, I think, Star Wars where the Millennium Falcon flies under this planet. You only see part of it, or in some of the launches that they have for SpaceX where they show like the imagery, or on Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin, they have these things. And yeah, the journey continues. Like you just keep getting benefits. And I feel like I have like a level of happiness that I haven't had in a long time. And it's just wonderful to keep climbing that mountain, keep delivering for us, or for myself and family. So whenever you make your space flight, tips for you is number one, any altitude is attainable with the right attitude. And attitude is everything. I don't know if this is a quote from Zig Ziglar or or one of somebody that had trained him, but what stuck with me was all the water in the world cannot sink a ship unless it gets on the inside. So the ship will always stay afloat as long as the person has the right attitude. Whether or not you think you can or you can't, you're right. Chance favors a prepared mind. So when I got the phone call of, hey, we have an opportunity to fly you on this mission, I already had my elevator speech ready because I had rehearsed it over and over. And when I had chatted with the wonderful lady that would let me in, she said that it was a memorable screen. And by the way, I paid for this trip myself. My employer did not pay for this. I had not sold any SpaceX stock. I had 15 different side hustles, did not interfere with work. I did it after hours or on the weekends. Most of them failed, but I had, 3 things that really seemed to work. And I even worked a little bit in Hollywood, trying to, with movie directing. I even got Jason Momoa to sign on one project. It didn't quite go through, but I remember chatting with his agent, like, how do I approach this person? And it was all about just really being ready and rehearsing in your mind. Self-development classes. I'm sure y'all have classes that you can take. They're optional in some cases, and I just opt for them. Some people say, oh, you're a little bit soft or whatever, but I'll tell you, it's a way of sticking your hand in the fire, because like sometimes with some of these classes, you're like, you feel a little fear, but those, where there's no mountain lion at the front, at the front of the cave. Those days are over. Like in terms of Maslow's hierarchy, we have food and shelter taken care of. Now we're at the top of the pyramid where we can handle those like big life problems, and the fear is in our mind. And we have to stick on our hand in the fire in order to make sure we get rid of those. Choosing a healthy lifestyle, and exercising, surrounding yourself with the people that you want to be like. So, what people around you in the Space Force are like, wow, they're amazing. I want to be like them, and getting a little bit more of them. Listening to talks by other space explorers or people that you look up to, listening to documentaries, and even people that you may disagree with, and listening to both sides. And then whenever you fly to space, within 24 hours, record your thoughts. So like have a voice recorder on your phone, record your thoughts, just start talking. Or if your buddies want to come along or they're there, just say, hey, can you just please listen to me for like an hour and a half or an hour? I'm just going to be talking. You can ask some questions and just talk. Write down what you felt. And then what can happen is and Jamila gave me this tip from Virgin Galactic, is like when you chat with other people that have flown to space, their experiences may get melted with yours. So there's like, first 24 hours, you want to record it all and really just absorb it. And then go to a place where you can see the Milky Way, or put on some visuals where you can just dream for like a week. I took a few days off because I really want to get back to work on Starship. But having like a couple weeks off where you can take off, if that's an opportunity, just let yourself dream. And then when you write down things on a piece of paper, and you like plan, whether it's what you want to do in your career or family or financial, these things happen on pieces of paper or on notes, and you keep that and you put it in your wallet, and they really go a long way. And prepare for life beyond the apogee, and share your stories with others. So I'll share a quick video. Let me unshare it real quick. Okay, and then stop share. And then I'll play this video for you. Let me get this all primed. Yeah, so let me pause this video and I'll maximize it. Okay, so that won't let me hop over and reshare the screen. Gotta figure out how to do this. Share. Okay, share sound. And here we go. Okay. Riding a rocket, that feeling was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. You can see me like, sitting up in front of my seat. I'm like reliving the moments. Yeah, it was magical. Things started getting really real at L-4 minutes. And once we were about 90 seconds away from being dropped, I could feel this energy and excitement. I gave a little hand gesture to the screen, love Virgin Galactic. Minus 30 seconds, I tensed up my body and was just prepared, getting myself prepared mentally. And then at 5 seconds, then I was like, okay, I'm fully engaged, I'm ready for this, to handle the drop, and my hands are down here grabbing. And then there's the release.
3, 2, 1, release. Fire,
and it's the most incredible feeling. I've been on a lot of roller coasters, and there was no comparison. We can see it go from, blue to darker blue, and then eventually to black. And yeah, it all just tied together perfectly. We proceeded into the gamma turn, and you could feel the acceleration change direction. All of a sudden, we went from being under high G loading to just nothing. We were given the signal to unbuckle, and I did. The sensation of floating was amazing. I felt we had so much time to do what we wanted to do. Float above my seat and look out the window, and then rotate about the window. And I think one of the highlights was when Tuva said, okay, unstrapping, and then we all held hands and reached out for each other, because this was really a mission. Having science being performed on the mission made us feel so much more prouder to be a part of it. I felt like I stood a little bit taller. It was really a highlight of the mission that we're furthering science and we're exploring space. By going on this flight and participating and providing emotional support to Tuva, and then also the scientists that are working on the payloads, this mission helped me accomplish really my goal for 15 years. It's this story that I have for myself that I can daydream about over and over. It's stuff that I can share with others forever, and then encourage them hopefully to take their own trip to space. I mean, it feels like I'm in a dream. So yeah, that's what I have, and I'll actually share the presentation again. Let me go back to the presentation. Here we go. And then I have one final slide for you. Okay, yeah, and then the last thing I'll leave with you is that rockets get us to space, or rockets don't get us to space, people do. So this is all the people at Virgin Galactic that did an amazing job. And just that an inspiration of teamwork and everybody, working together. Yeah, and that's it. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if folks have, questions, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of I5 Space, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us, especially with your busy schedule and all the incredible things that you're doing. It was amazing hearing about your journey, and we can't wait to be a part of the future of space exploration with you. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you very much, Andy. I definitely learned a lot here today. I mean, I am personally not that in depth into space myself. I'm more cyber, so I've gotten a chance to actually really learn and see a lot that you've got to do. So that's really awesome.
Thanks, Richard.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.